Good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine, and I am the coordinator of postdoctoral affairs and research training in the School of Graduate Studies. And we are very glad to have with us today Colin Czerneda, who is going to lead us through our workshop on sound and lighting. Very important for everyone who is making a GradFlix video, regardless of what you actually do and how you film it. You'll want to make sure that you understand the tips and premises that Colin is able to share with us today. We're very excited about all this. We do have a Slido for Q&A if you want to pop that in, or if you're here, you can actually pop your stuff in the chat. We've got lots of time for interaction as well. And since this is an awesome technical video, it's only fair to say that I am not on camera because my video is not working today. So I am here if you have any questions. It's being monitored and we are happy to help you. And with that, I am super excited to hand this over to Colin and to hear all of the amazing tips and strategies that he has for us on lighting and sound.
Okay, well, my name is Colin Czerneda, a digital media specialist in the Faculty of Humanities. I've been with the faculty for over 12 years now, and spent a good chunk of that time doing video work for the faculty. And yeah, we're going to be talking about a little bit about video and a little bit about audio and some lighting tips and just some general tips to kind of get you going with recording a presentation. So yeah, I'm gonna jump over to PowerPoint because I've got a PowerPoint presentation to illustrate a few things, and hopefully everybody can see that. And
we can see it.
Excellent. Okay, I got a thumbs up. Can I get 2 thumbs up? No, we're not going to get 2 thumbs up. That's okay. All right. So there we go. We got 2 thumbs up. Thank you. Anyways, yeah, let's talk about some video. So this is a non-technical guide. I'm not doing a tutorial, on the specific button pushing, but just talking more generally about how you can approach your project and, how you might want to do it. So, yeah, as I understand with this from last year and for this year, your submission could be a video, it could be a moving slideshow, it could be an animation. There's it sounds like there's multiple different ways to approach it. You can use things like PowerPoint or Google Slides, and I've got a link in here which I will make the PowerPoint available so you can check out the link. With a 2-minute video from Microsoft on how to record a presentation in PowerPoint. And of course, if you're handy at all with PowerPoint, you can, make use of animations right within the software there. So you don't necessarily have to invest in different software or something more complicated that's going to take you a long time to get started with. You can use some, sort of more basic tools that are available more or less to everybody. PowerPoint is available through the Office 365 license for McMaster, and Google Slides is free for everybody. So that's those are some simple ways you can do presentations. I also added a point here. If you are feeling a little bit more sort of adventurous and you want to do a little bit of basic video editing, there's a couple of good options out there. If you've got a Mac, iMovie is a good one that tends to be installed or is easily available. And then if you're on Mac or PC and you're feeling like you want to dive into a slightly more professional tool, DaVinci Resolve is a really good option. It's free. It's a professional tool. There are some pro features in a pay-for version, but it's not a piece of software that is limited for a lot of the basic things that you do. Even the more advanced functions are all there. So that's a good option. Yeah. So that's ways to create. I wanted to talk a little bit about gear. So this will, we'll talk a little bit about the video and the audio side of things there. So, and we'll get through some of that as we get on with the rest of the presentation as well. I'm recommending in most cases that the simplest and easiest access tools are the best. That's my big bullet point there. And the thing that we have available to most people these days is a smartphone. Even a reasonably budget smartphone has the ability to record some pretty good quality video, which is quite remarkable, the stuff that can be done these days. I've seen some recent reviews of some smartphones that are retailing for, like about 200 Canadian, and they do 4K video, and they have really good microphones, and they may not have the best, but they are still quite capable. So if you've got even a more basic smartphone, you should have the ability to record a pretty decent video. If you've got a fancier one, then of course you'll get a slightly better result, but the end result is going to be pretty similar on the whole. So we have access to incredible video capture technologies now. So and for the most part, people are carrying them in their pocket and may not even necessarily think about it in that way. So if you're thinking about doing a video presentation, the thing that you might need is just a smartphone and a good place to record it, and really then you're limited more by technique and some basic setup, which is what I'm going to talk about as well. So there are some options if you are planning to use a smartphone. There are tripod attachments. So if you happen to have access to a tripod for photography or camera, there are attachments that you can buy that will attach a smartphone to the tripod. That's one option. Some smartphone cases come with their own little pop-out stands. That works. You could do a makeshift stand, or I've seen someone, they did a great little setup, and they were just in front of a bookcase, and they had their smartphone propped up against some books, and that was steady and stable enough to make a good video. That's a possibility. If you want to spend a little bit of money, you could get something flexible like I've got it here, the GorillaPod Mobile Mini. It's not the only one. It's just one of the ones that was out there, and I grabbed a quick shot of it. And you can attach these things anywhere. You could attach it on a tree. You could prop it up on a bookshelf or piece of furniture or wherever. So there's just so many options out there, and I think sometimes the challenge is not that there aren't, there's a lack of options, but that you aren't necessarily thinking about them. So so those are some simple suggestions on if you're planning to record a video. Moving to the next slide, sound. So again, if you're using something like a smartphone, then it already has a built-in microphone, and most of them are, by all rights, pretty good at recording sound. And my experience has been that it doesn't matter whether you're using, a $300 microphone or you're using your smartphone, which is multi-purpose. The biggest challenge is not with the tools, but with your environment. So doing things, isolating your environment, limiting background noises, being aware of those background noises is something that you need to plan for when you're going to do your recording. So whether you're recording audio to do over an animation, or you're doing video at the same time, you need to sort of really be aware of the environment. So, is your furnace on? Does it make a lot of noise? Can you hear it on the recording? That's something you should maybe check. Do a quick test run and see whether it can be heard. Sometimes it's fine when it's on, but then it shuts off halfway through, and then it's different. So that can be an issue. Fans, pets. I have a cat. She sometimes likes to interrupt presentations. It might happen today. It might not. We'll see what happens. If there's other people in the house that are making noises, you need to just control for all of those possibilities. Maybe just close the door. Maybe you need to go somewhere else. Maybe you need to call quiet on set. whatever the solution is that you use. Just think about environment. The other thing to consider too is what kind of sound environment that you're in. So, what I'm referring to there is how much bounce you're going to get from nearby objects. So I'm sure many of you experience this. If you go into, if you've moved houses or something, and you move into a house with, and there's no furniture in, it's quite echoey. And then you put in a couch and you put in up some pictures and some furniture, and that echo goes away. Some rooms have more echo than others, and that is both a function of the geometry of the room as well as what's in the room that's absorbing sound. So if you're able to record in a room with less bounce, with a lot of soft objects in it, if you've got area rugs, carpets, that kind of thing, it's actually better to be in that environment because it will absorb the sound that goes out, and less of it will be reflected back, which can be quite distracting in some recordings. So it's something worth thinking about. Sometimes you can't control for that, or you don't have the opportunity, but it's good to consider that as you set up for your recording. I have had a lot of experience recording outside, and so you may want to consider recording outside. There are benefits. You don't, in a lot of cases, if it's a cloudy day, that's actually a pretty good thing for recording video. But you also have to think about, environmental sounds. If it's a windy day, that's going to be a real challenge. Even if you've got expensive equipment, even some of the best filters will still struggle if it's quite windy, and doubly so for a small smartphone microphone. So that's always a consideration. I've filmed on campus when there was construction, and I had to go and find a quiet place to record something because we could hear construction noises in the background when we did our test run. So the bottom line is that you just need to think about where you're at, what's in the background, and be really conscious of it. Because most of the time when we're just wandering around, we don't really worry about these kinds of things. Oh, there's a bus going by, there's a truck backing up. These things kind of get filtered into the background as everyday noises, but when you're recording a video, then they become quite front and center, and they can be distracting from the content that you're sharing. So something to, you need to think about that when you're setting up. And I'm just going to stop quickly and see if there's any questions popping up in the chat. I actually can't see the chat at the moment. Oops.
I've got the chat. It's okay.
We're all good?
We're good. We did have one question that had been submitted by the Slido.
Okay.
And it was a lighting question.
Well, we're going to get to lighting.
Yeah. So I mean, I have a question about sound.
Sure.
So one of the things that I would want to know is it possible to adjust different levels of sound?
Yes, and that depends on the tools that you're using. So if you're using you're just using the basic video editor that comes with most smartphones, you probably can't do very much. That said, a lot of them do adjust for sound automatically. They have some of them are pretty sophisticated these days with AI algorithms to try and boost audio levels and filter out background noises and that kind of thing. If you import your video project into something like iMovie, then you have some limited controls. If you use something more sophisticated like DaVinci Resolve, which I mentioned, then you have some pretty sophisticated capabilities to isolate specific frequencies. You can bring those up, you can bring those down. It can take some time to do, so it's not the simplest thing. But if you're keen on making sure that your audio is good, then you need to start from a good place, but you can always use the video edit or the editing tools to adjust them. Another piece of software I should have put in the slide is Audacity. That's another free utility that's specifically for editing audio, and it's considered a reasonably professional tool, but it's available for free. So
yes, it is, and it's not that hard to use.
It's not too hard to use. That's right. That's right. So a few tutorials and away you go to work with that. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
That does. Thank you so much, Colin.
Okay, good.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to move on from sound. I'm going to talk a little bit about composition. So the first thing I'm going to say is, in most cases, it is better to record the video while you're holding. Again, I'm assuming you're using a smartphone. If you're using, a digital camera of some kind, then this will be the default. But if you are using a smartphone, my recommendation is in most cases that you film it in a horizontal, so being held like this as opposed to being held like this, the way we sort of reflexively do these days. And I did put a little asterisk at the bottom there, because if for some reason your intended audience is all smartphone users, for example, if for some reason your format is Instagram stories, I don't know if that's a possibility, but if it were, then sure, then you would film it, in that orientation. But most of the time, if you're intending it to, show up on a TV or a computer screen, laptop screen, that kind of thing, then you want to film horizontally. And we always see that with live video. People tend to shoot that way, and then you'll see it on the news. They have to do something on the sides just to kind of make that vertical orientation work. So for your presentations, I would suggest most of the time it's going to be horizontal, unless you have a very good reason or a deliberate reason to shoot it vertical. So rules are made to be broken with creative stuff, but it's good to, again, be thinking about this when you're planning your composition. The other thing to think about is the framing. So this is one of my favorites to talk about, because I'm sure over the last few years we've all seen some degree of this where framing has become an issue. So there's even been gags on comedy shows and TVs about it. But you want to make sure that when you're presenting, that your head is somewhere in the top third of the frame. Especially your forehead, you want to be sort of up in that area, and that creates a good framing for seeing your face, a little bit of the shoulders. Usually people tend to find it really uncomfortable if you're zoomed in and it's just your face, so you want to make sure that there's a good composition, and so that they can see sort of the right amount. So yeah, always good to center yourself in the frame. I have seen it where people have presented stuff and they're sitting over, which in some cases, and I did again put an asterisk, does make sense. If you intend to do a presentation where you're going to have bullet points pop up in the air beside you, then you may want to change your composition so that it is intended to be that way. But don't do it by accident. If you're just kind of off in the corner and talking and you're not intending to do that, then that's not going to look so good. And we've also seen it where sometimes you'll see somebody and the only thing you can see is their forehead, and that's not ideal either. So you want to make sure that the people are appropriately framed in your screen. So and I did that one as a bit of a gag. So yeah, anyways, you want to make sure, you want to think about the framing. Oh, I did that one as a gag too. Sorry, I can't resist. All right. The other thing to consider too is, the space around you if you're recording a video. Make sure you aren't too far or too close to the camera. As I mentioned, you don't want to make your viewing audience uncomfortable because you're kind of in their personal space. Again, unless you intend to do that in a very specific way. But in general, you want to make sure that you have a good framing. You also want to think about what's in your background. Simpler backgrounds are better. A flat color. Sometimes a bookshelf works, but then you also need to do things like make sure that you know exactly which books are in that background. Because there's stories out there, of course, of something funny that shows up in a serious video. So you want to make sure that you've considered everything that can be seen by the camera, not just you yourself in the center of the frame, but what's around it as well. Okay. All right, and now we're going to talk about lighting. So always a good idea, make sure your face is well lit. And so at least, again, when you're doing sort of a presentation, you want people to be able to see what your reactions are. So so if natural lighting is available, and I'm fortunate today, I've got some kind of, it's an overcast day is actually good for cameras because it's basically a soft box. It's a diffuse lighting, and I've got some coming in from my window here, so that's great. If I was in my office today, it would be kind of the opposite because I'm in a windowless office. But if you're able to make use of natural lighting for some or maybe all of your lighting source, that's usually pretty good. It can be a challenge if it's a really sunny day, or if the lighting conditions are changing because maybe there's some clouds and the sun's popping in and out. Then you need to be a little more cautious with using natural lighting. But if it's the way it's been in the last several weeks, where we've got this kind of dull gray, it's a little bit depressing, but it is really good for lighting. So work with it if you can. If you're working with artificial lighting, lights above, behind, on the side, then make sure you consider what it's doing to the light on your face. And we'll talk about a couple of different setups that might work. So, always look out for shadows from above and below. Some of them can be less flattering. Some of them are actually can be good. And of course, one of the things you don't want to have too much of, and I do have a little bit of that today, but not too badly, so it's not overwhelming. But you don't want to have a bright light coming in from behind you when you're doing something like this. So I do have a track light that's doing that, but it's not overwhelming. It would be more overwhelming if you filmed yourself in front of a window. So if you are inside, you're making use of natural lighting, you want to make sure that the light is hitting the front of your face, not that you're standing in front of the window. You don't want that backlighting. That makes it really difficult. Although, again, modern smartphones and cameras are getting really good at being able to sort of span the range of dark to light, the dynamic range. So they are getting pretty good at that, but you still don't want to do it in most cases, again, unless you intend for it to be deliberately delivered that way. There's a couple of different lighting styles you may want to consider, and one of the things I wanted to mention too is that you don't necessarily need expensive lighting rigs. You could use a lamp, you could use a couple of lamps. I sometimes I've got a little LED thing that I use for construction, doing home renovation type things that I need light, and I just put a white sheet over it, and then I have a very diffuse light. So I've used that on a couple of shoots to just kind of fill the light a little bit. And so, use what you have available to you. You don't necessarily need to do anything expensive. Use lamps. Table lamps are great because you can move them around. Use indoor lights if you have to. Try and use multiple sources if you can. So there are a couple of popular lighting styles that most movies, photographers, portrait photographers especially, use. One of them is called Rembrandt lighting. And this can be done a couple of ways. You can do it with a lamp. I've got a lamp icon, a lamp or a light. And then you can use a second light that's further away or is more diffuse. And you could also make use of a reflector of some kind. It could be a piece of paper, it could be a Bristol board, again, it could be a white sheet or a bright sheet. Use the things that you have around you to set this up if you don't need the sort of the professional setup. And so what you do with this is you've got a bright light that is illuminating sort of the front part of the face, and then you have another light that's filling the other side, but it's not quite as bright. Creates some nice contrast. That's one style. Another style is called butterfly lighting. And that's because the light is on the sort of the other side of the camera, pointing sort of straight in and a little bit down. And so it creates kind of this, what they call a butterfly effect, a shadow on the nose. And they do that for a lot of portraits and that kind of thing. So that can work. Again, you want to have as diffuse a light as possible. So if it's a lamp, with a shade on it, that is going to be better than if you take the shade off, because then you're going to have really harsh shadows. You want to diffuse the light a little bit. And then the sort of the last thing I was going to say about lighting is always experiment prior to recording. You want to make sure that you're happy with your setup, and sort of just do some test records, without doing all the work up front. Test it out a little bit, make sure it looks good, make sure the colors feel good. Some lights are going to have different colors than other lights, even if they're all technically white. There are different types of white, and so some lights are not going to work out well, some are going to look great. Natural lighting always helps. So just experiment with your setup prior to doing the official recording, if you will. And be comfortable, take your time, check your work, and go for success. So there we go. I think that's the end of my formal presentation, but we can do some questions and chat some more.
Excellent. We actually have some questions here. And so this one's from Dylan, and it's a great question. It's one that I have wondered about and experienced many times. How do you reduce light reflecting from glasses? And that's the first part. There's another part to the question, which is also, how do I cheaply achieve diffuse lighting so the whole face is lit evenly, so the forehead is bright but the eyes are dark? Sure. I don't know if Rembrandt style would cover that.
It might, generally speaking. So this is why I brought this light. So I've got this, I got my LED light here and it's blinding me, but if I use that just as it is, then it's pretty harsh, right? And so, but if I've just got like a piece of white cloth, and if I put that over it, then I'm still blinded, but there's still light, but it's not quite as intense. And if I just unfold it and I can find sort of the right amount, and now I've got a little bit nicer lighting on my face without having spent money on anything complicated. So a light with a sheet over it, or a piece of fabric, or like a white t-shirt, I'm trying to think of ways to do things without needing to spend money on a light diffuser and stuff, because then things get expensive. So
right. And for safety's sake, is it safe to actually put a sheet or something over a light bulb?
And that's a good question, and it really depends on the light bulb. So with this thing, it's pretty well vented, so it's fine. LEDs are pretty good because they don't generate a lot of heat compared to old incandescent bulbs. If you're using an incandescent bulb, then yeah, you need to make sure that it's like suspended over it, which is why lampshades exist, so that you've got a structure that's away from the light. So yeah, you have to be careful, and that's a very good point. But it really depends on the light.
Perfect.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, would this solution also reduce the light reflection from glasses?
It would, yes. That is difficult. I've struggled with that before because I've used lighting setups with diffusers, and they're still in the lights. So my suggestion is if you can offset the light, and if you use that Rembrandt style where you're lighting from the sides rather than from the front, that is going to work better with people wearing glasses most of the time, because it's the direct angle that is the issue. So if you can move the light off to the side, you should at least be able to minimize the reflection. Some lenses in glasses seem to do it more than others. And I don't know, it has to do with the coatings or the structure of the glasses. So that can, yeah, I mean, offsetting it should help. Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. We have another question. Wondering about the best color of light bulb. So there are white bulbs, there are yellow bulbs, there are daylight bulbs, there are
Yeah.
slightly bluish bulbs.
Yes.
You know, if you're trying to light up for a video, whether it's a human or an object, because you may have different opinions on those things. What would your recommendation be for the light bulb?
Yeah, so this gets into a little bit of color science. So we measure, what we're talking about is color temperature, and it's measured in kelvins. The sun, the color temperature of the sun is in the, I think it's 5600 K or somewhere around there. If I remember right, don't quote me on that one. So the sun tends to have a bluish white tint to it. So that looks unusual indoors, but outdoors it feels quite natural. So really what matters is all of your lighting sources combined, what are they? So the mix of a low color temperature light, like an old incandescent bulb at say 2800 Kelvin, or even a bit lower, if you mix that with natural lighting, then you can create two very different colors, and then you're kind of having clashing colors. So what you want to do is have a similar color white balance. And so smartphones will do this automatically. If you've got if you're shooting it on a camera, then you can dial in and match the white balance to the lights that you've got. But you just really need to make sure that all the lights have the same color temperature. So, and again, if you're using it on a smartphone, it will then attempt to get the neutral tones based on the color temperature that's around. But if you've got different lights with different color temperatures, then that causes it to kind of find a middle ground, and that doesn't always look great. So,
Wow.
So the specific temperature doesn't matter too much. The consistency of it in the scene matters more.
Cool. Okay, so I'm feeling like we need to be able to do this in person next year for some actual hands-on stuff, because this is that's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that we had was, would you recommend a microphone for someone being filmed by a smartphone? So, you know, if you want to get the person framed in the shot in the appropriate manner, depending on what they're doing, it makes me think of Geneva Smith's video from last year where it was live action with people. So, you know, you had to be standing far enough back to be able to capture the scene. And of course, I'm gesturing and you can't see me. You know, would you recommend that they use some kind of a microphone if they're not like right up at the camera?
Yeah, that can help. And again, I'm always conscious. I'm cost conscious, so I tend to start with use the simplest, and that's just the mic that's inside most smartphones. Those are pretty decent at picking things up, and part of that is the hardware has evolved, and part of that is the software has really gotten really good at isolating. So that can work, but if you're in a challenging environment and you've got action, then you may want to consider some kind of setup. And a bunch of manufacturers, and I can't think of a specific product off the top of my head, but I've seen them before where, you know, a bunch of manufacturers make products that work with smartphones. So yeah, you could get a lapel mic. You know, if you're intending to move around a lot, and they're going to be far away from the recording source, you may want to consider a lapel mic that attaches to a shirt, or I've seen some that attach, you know, underneath a shirt so they're invisible. Some people stick them to their chests. There's different technologies out there depending on how you want to do it. We live in an age where there's so many people who do content creation on YouTube and other platforms that there's you know, there's a market for this stuff. So it is out there. It's just you do have to spend a bit of money potentially, or see if you can rent it from somebody. It helps. It definitely helps. You know, when I do video interviews for promotional pieces and that kind of thing, I almost always end up using a lapel mic. I occasionally use a mounted mic, but most of the time it's a lapel mic, so I'm capturing one, you know, really good audio source for the person. But there's sometimes where I've used a mounted mic because it's not just the person I want to capture. There is actually environmental audio that I want to capture, and then I would do that. So it depends on what you're recording.
Okay, and a similar question. Do you have any tips for someone who has decided to do a voiceover instead and matching that with the video that they're shooting? Not necessarily doing a lip sync kind of thing, but you know, if you're doing a voiceover, what kinds of things would you want someone to bear in mind?
Right. It's really not that different. I guess it would only be more complicated if you did a voiceover in one place and you were matching that with a video recording later. Then you may want to consider trying to kind of match the audio, or even record it in the same space so that it sounds the same. But yeah, in terms of audio recording, you know, like if you're doing a narration, for example, and there's no video, it's basically the same thing. You know, use the same principles of making sure that you have good, clean audio. You know, you don't have barking dogs or backing up trucks or whatever in the background. Those are so hard to remove, and it's just a pain. So I wouldn't, have good, clean audio is basically it.
Fair enough. And we actually do have, so the recording suite in Lions is available for folks to use if that's something that they choose. So you could avoid the barking dog scenario.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Yeah, if that's available, then excellent. The recording booths like that are great because they tend to have sound deadening materials on the wall. You'll see the funny patterns. That's all about, controlling the bounce so that you don't get a lot of you get good, clean audio, nicely isolated audio. I've seen some people do great things, again, with just a smartphone and using the audio recorder app on their smartphone and recording audio. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you want to go the next level, if you can rent an H4n Zoom, not to be confused with the Zoom, the software that we're using right now, but an H4n Zoom audio recorder. Those are really great. Like, they have mounted mics and they pick up fantastic audio. So if you can rent one of those or gain access to one in some way, that would be sort of, the next level up. And it would be cleaner and better audio than your smartphone. But again, it's a little extra, complication, but
good to know. And
possibility. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure what kinds of mics they have at Lions, but I'm sure they're going to be fancy.
Yeah, probably. And I bet you they probably do have some H4n Zooms.
There we go. It's worth checking out if anyone is recording audio after the fact. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, this has been amazing. I'm just checking if we have any more questions. We're happy to pose those to Colin, so I'll just give a few seconds there. Colin, as always, this is absolutely fantastic and so helpful, absolutely crucial to getting the look and feel of your GradFlix video the way that you want it, with all of the hard work that everyone's putting in. This is definitely going to make a huge difference. So, all right, we don't have any other questions coming in. So I will take but a few moments to say that we really appreciate your sharing your expertise with us. And in terms of our workshops, We do still have a few more workshops on the schedule, and the stop motion workshop was rescheduled due to yesterday's snowstorm because it was held in person. So that has been pushed to the following week to February 1st. So there's still time to register for that. And everyone is welcome to reach out with any questions, and we will have opportunities for you to be getting feedback on all of this good stuff that is so important to making your videos visible and audible and having, as I say, the communication impact that you want. You don't want your video derailed by sound or audio or sorry, images that people can't clearly see. So unless, of course, that is your intent, in which case, go tell that story. All right, Colin, thank you so very, very much.